capture the emissions that are derived from.
There's lots of signals that are being sent around what the universe is going to look like 10, 20. The conversation has shifted to say, okay, how do we do things differently? Thank you, Charles. You're making this.
For us, what matters is over the course of time, we can actually see action. We can see that our people have access to energy, and that they're using this energy to improve their lives and their livelihoods. I wouldn't talk much about energy transition, because energy transition assumes that you actually have the energy to make the transition. in, you know, in some of our countries, we're not at the transition stage yet. Maybe if you're talking in terms of cooking, because a lot of the energy and fuel that we use for cooking is comes from wood or coal, which as a Minister of Environment is alarming to me, because there's a lot of deforestation that is caused because our primary source of energy is for cooking is wood and coal. So in that area, in Sierra Leone, we are working on transition, introducing clean cooking technology, stoves that use less wood or coal, which not only help me as a minister in terms of reducing the deforestation, as the Ministry of Environment embarks on planting trees, it also has health benefits because the cooking here now emits less smoke, and that smoke inhalation is a huge health risk to people, especially our women, our aunties, our mothers, our sisters who do most of the cooking in our part of the world. Energy, our energy consumption is low in Africa, but as one of the speakers mentioned, you can't just say Africa as a whole. There's some countries that have high energy consumption, and then you have countries like ours where energy consumption is very low. So for that reason, I stay away from the transition talk. For me and for Sierra Leone, what we need is energy production. Now, we want to produce energy, and we need to produce energy. The challenge is that, if Sierra Leone government decides today that we want to put a 300 megawatt coal power plant, our friends would come and say, no, don't do that. That's just bad for the environment. We're moving to renewable energy. But yet we see when, the same friends are constrained because their energy sources are being cut off. They're quick to fire up their power plants. They're coal-fired power plants. Now, what does that mean? That means that, we want energy. You're constraining us from using the cheapest source of energy, and there's no money really to transition to this renewable energy. And that is something that we need to address. Now, the announcement yesterday by the UAE that there's a funding for 15 gigawatts of power in Africa is quite encouraging, and we are hoping that we can tap into that. However, there are challenges on our side, and there are things that we need to do to be able to fully utilize that sort of opportunity. Because with these sort of projects, you need to be frank. Like, there's no point in us generating 500 megawatts of energy when we can't really evacuate it because we have dilapidated transmission and distribution lines. So we need to be frank ourselves, and we need to be frank when we're having these conversations. That it's great that you want to give us this energy, but can we talk T&D also? Not just so we can, we don't just want to generate the energy, because you generate it and you can't transmit it. What it ends up being a further burden on government. But if you can transmit it and you reduce the losses, you have lines, there's very little theft, people are willing to pay for it. Like, no one wants to be in the dark. You'd be surprised how people get used to having energy the minute they start having access to it. It's like the telephone. A few decades ago, people thought Africa was not a place where you should invest in communications, until Mo Ibrahim started launching Celtel in countries all across the continent. And before you know it, I can be anywhere in the world and call my aunt in the village, and we can have a conversation. And today, anywhere on the continent, people have their mobile phones. Same thing with energy. In my little village in Sierra Leone, the first energy project that was deployed there was 4 or 5 years ago. If you go there now, you would think that these people have had power all their lives. An outage, and you would hear all sorts of complaints, like, why the power isn't there. And they're willing and ready to pay for it.
Today we are officially launching our organization. Our organization seeks to advance policy that advances Africa's realities, right? We feel that the global conversations are not factoring in the African realities for our developmental needs and energy access needs, right? So I've been part of the Africa Climate Summit. We are looking forward to the declaration. I think we are hoping the declaration will give a strong statement around renewable energy on the continent. And so what we are waiting to see is, once that commitment is made, how do you implement it, right? We need to move away from commitments to actual realities, right? So we want to move away from these promises of 100 billion, 100 gigawatts, to just start saying how will it actually be implemented, and at least change the lives and realities of a lot of Africans. What we've tried to do is almost to have it has been a very inclusive summit, right? So everyone with whatever agenda, whether it was forests or energy, have been included. And so as a first summit, this is a first summit where Africa's issues have actually been put into the frame, right? And so I think over 20,000 delegates from all across the continent came in, as well as our European counterparts, and they've had an opportunity to actually hear what Africa actually needs out of, or at least position Africa's needs in the climate conversation. The climate crisis needs everyone to pull in from all the different areas. It's very difficult for everyone's issue to be prioritized and to be made the main issue, right? And so if you see from the declaration, you're seeing, there's renewable energy, there's talk of our forests, there's carbon markets. So I mean, by trying to be too inclusive, I think the challenge has been that some people have felt excluded from the process. The first thing, we need to change the perception, right? And that's what we are trying to do at Enzi Ijayo. We need to change this perception that Africa is not bankable, right? So I think a lot of speakers have spoken around the idea that Africa is high risk. And so we only get capital when the returns are too significant, right? So if you look at bankable projects in Europe, you're looking at 2%, 3%. When you're looking on the African continent, people are asking for 18% or 19% for the same. And so we have to address that critical financing question if we are to increase that renewable potential.